I met Lena just before I enlisted in the Army. At that moment, she promised she would wait for me. For a time, she kept that promise, but after 2 decades, we ultimately parted ways. The reason was both simple and painful. My wife had cheated on me. In hindsight, I understand that waiting would have been difficult for anyone. The early years of our marriage were challenging, yet on the surface, they appeared successful. We had 2 sons and our own apartment. However, a closer look revealed that our relationship was anything but ordinary. Over time, Lena transformed into what I can only describe as a battle-hardened woman. She gained a significant amount of weight, but to her, it was not an issue. Meanwhile, I remained small and fragile, just as I was before joining the Army. This shift in our family dynamics was telling. Lena took charge, working at a bearing factory where everyone had nicknames to facilitate communication. After all, it's easier to say skull than to explain who a locksmith is. That's how I became known as Beard. During my teenage years, I had the fortune of meeting an incredible mentor at the factory, an old professional named Daniel, affectionately known as the Master. He taught me the intricacies of the job, and when he retired, I became the lead at the grinding site, a role that the shop supervisor, News, and his deputy relied on. Honestly, the job wasn't too demanding. What mattered was attention to detail and precision. The pay was decent. So I accepted News's offer to become a grinder, the Master to be precise. However, Lena never took the time to learn about my work. She collected her salary, and I found myself working double shifts. The workshop had very few women, just 2 deaf cleaners, and that was it. Lena often sat idly, avoiding work while indulging in a steady supply of cheap beer at the start of each shift. I confronted her on multiple occasions, urging her to put in more effort. Lena, I promised the boss you would try your best. It's not just about us. You're letting everyone down. Her response was a contemptuous snort followed by a self-centered retort. These are your problems, not mine. The betrayal involving Bob will become notorious, whispered about for years. One day, Bob broke from his usual routine of morning drinks, and Lena was right there with him. Later, she claimed they drank so much that neither remembered how they ended up in bed together. But Bob's reckless ways didn't last long. Just as things reached their peak, a moment every man understands, Bob's heart gave out, and he collapsed on top of Lena. Meanwhile, the workshop was rocked by the anguished wail of the grinder as Lena stood frozen in shock, her panic causing her to forget everything, even her underwear and robe, as she rushed to help. Hurry, hurry, she screamed, but it was too late. There was nothing the staff could do to save Bob. After the funeral, despite the tragedy, the rumor mill continued to churn, with workers laughing behind my back, dubbing me the bearded goat and mocking me with jibes like, "Here we are the beard with horns." Lena was soon let go, her behavior deemed a breach of company ethics, along with her alcohol consumption at work. As for me, I didn't stay much longer either. I relocated to another city with Lena, but by then, she felt like a stranger. Our children had grown up and were living independently. I found a good job in a new city, as qualified workers were always in demand. I took out a mortgage on an apartment and eventually met a new woman, one who was different. Humble, loving, and most importantly, respectful of me. That's how I reinvented my life, leaving the past behind. The only remnant of my former life was the old nickname, Beard.